As they say, you're not trying if you're not cheating, and maybe these warriors took the saying a little too literally. Here are a few of the dirtiest MMA fighters, listed in no particular order without further ado. Jon Jones. When you think about Jon Jones, the former light heavyweight champion of the UFC, what word springs to mind? Well, for some, the positives spring to mind. Greatness, athleticism, dominance. Words that really capture just how incredible a talent he's, but these days, it's hard not to think of the negatives when Jon Jones is brought up. The eye pokes, the PD controversies, yanking Glover to share his arm during their fight. Jones is a guy who knows exactly how to toe the line between going too far and getting away scot-free. Sure, some might say that his insanely long reach makes the constant eye pokes a bit more understandable. But at this stage, it's hard to fully trust this once-in-a-generation athlete. Whether he can find success as a heavyweight or not is anyone's guess. But do not be surprised to see Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou, and the rest of the division's best with a finger in their eye before too long. Yoel Romero. It's very hard to hate on Yoel Romero. Sure, his stop-start style of fighting isn't for everyone. But a real black mark on his insane career so far was, of course, the controversy known only as Stoolgate. The year was 2014, and the veteran Tim Kennedy was really putting it on Romero coming into the third round. So much so that Yoel and his team resorted to putting too much baseline on him, something that forced the cutman to return to the octagon to remove it. During this time, Romero was given extra time to sit on the stool, time he used to recover and eventually finish Kennedy just a matter of seconds later. Also, during his 2016 bout with Chris Weidman, Romero could be seen covering himself with water in between rounds, something that Joe Rogan quickly pointed out. And in his clash with Jakar Sousa, Romero grabbed onto the fence in the second round, which got him a stern warning from the referee. Even later in his career, when he fought Paulo Costa, Romero decided to employ a dirty move, distracting his opponent in the middle of an exchange by pointing off into the distance, causing enough confusion that the Soldier of God was able to drop in with a massive shot. Again, it's hard to hate on Yoel too much, but the history books show him as a fighter who was not against resorting to a dirty move or two. Mike Kyle. Mike Kyle seemed to be in a pretty good spot when he finally arrived in the UFC. 4 straight knockouts, all in the first round, and Kyle looked like he was truly ready for a shot at the big time. Reading the result of his debut, a first-round knockout of Wes Sims, it seems like Mike Kyle had truly hit the ground running in the UFC. The problem? Well, he also bit his opponent on the pectoral muscle, something he still denies to this day, even though the marks tell a different story. Once he left the UFC, his debut in Strikeforce was marred by an eye poke, which caused the fight to be declared a technical draw. His next fight against Brian Olsen was another level of awful entirely. After grounding his opponent, Kyle proceeded to soccer kick Olsen, before then unloading a barrage even as referee Josh Rosenthal attempted to separate them. It took the assistance of Herb Dean to finally get Kyle off of him, and from there he was handed an 18-month suspension. Safe to say, Mike Kyle is not remembered fondly among MMA fans. Conor McGregor. If Conor McGregor stands out for any singular reason on this list, it's the wide range of A-list stars he has pulled dirty moves on over the years. During his grudge match with Khabib Nurmagomedov, he somehow got away with a blatant illegal knee, hammering him in the face while Khabib was in side control. On top of that, he could also be seen holding onto Khabib's shorts, sticking his toes in the fence and grabbing his glove. Against Dustin Poirier, McGregor was pretty clearly positioning the diamond for an upkick from the bottom, holding onto his glove as Poirier postured up. Even outside of the octagon, during his boxing match with Floyd Mayweather, Conor could be seen landing several rabbit punches to the back of his head. But unlike his cheating in the UFC, this time he was immediately warned by the referee. Conor certainly knows he can get away with pretty much anything when it comes to the UFC octagon, and his disregard for the rules when it suits him makes his inclusion here a no-brainer. Josh Koscheck. Love him or hate him, Josh Koscheck was a pretty commendable bad guy during his best years in the sport. Whether he was playing the heel opposite the likes of George St. Pierre, or knowing his housemates on the very first season of Tough, Koscheck was very clearly zoned into whatever task he had in front of him, and doing whatever he could do to ruffle a few feathers. But for our list, we have to focus on his bout with Paul Daley, one of the most controversial 3-rounders you'll ever see. And sure, we all remember Daley lashing out at Koscheck, losing his UFC contract in the process. But the reasons he did so are far more interesting. Earlier in the fight, Koscheck had fake damage from an illegal knee, something he had actually done previously against Anthony Johnson. Except this time, it actually resulted in a point deduction for Daley. Obviously, sucker punching Koscheck after the final bell was a bad move, but it's certainly a bit more understandable with the context of what happened. Also during his bout with Anthony Johnson, apart from faking damage from an illegal knee, Koscheck also poked Johnson in the eye repeatedly. Safe to say, Koscheck wasn't exactly the cleanest fighter during his time in the UFC. Gilbert Ivel. Gilbert Ivel is just about as bad as it gets when it comes to repeat offenders. 3 disqualification losses can be found on his record, ranging from eye gouges and fish hooks to one major standout that well and truly steals the show. During an otherwise uneventful clash with 8 Backman, a disagreement with the referee over a clinch position eventually saw Ivel reach his boiling point. Out of nowhere, the Dutchman decided to level the official there and then, punching him straight on the jaw to lose the fight by way of the extremely rare ref KO DQ. As you would expect, Ivel really did struggle to get a license to fight for quite some time after this, with many major promotions giving him a very solid no whenever his name was mentioned. Even with this being the case, the UFC still opted to sign him on the back of an 8-1 run. Karma really did prove to be his undoing, however, as Ivel was cut after going 0-3 in the promotion. Gerard Gordo. Most of you will remember Gerard Gordo for his appearance on UFC 1 where he made it to the tournament final, only to be submitted by Royce Gracie. However, you might not be aware of the fact that Gordo actually bit Royce's ear when the Brazilian mounted him just before the finish. Gerard himself actually defended this move, saying he might as well give Gracie something to remember him by. What's crazier still is that 2 years later, during an appearance in a veiled Tudo tournament in Japan, he repeatedly gobbed at the eyes of his opponent Yuki Nakai, and it eventually led to Nakai losing the sight in the eye in question. To make matters even worse, when Gordo was questioned about it, he said that if there was ever a rematch between the two, he would go for his eyes again. Rosimar Palhares. And finally, we come to one of the odder mentions on this list. Rosimar Palhares is a fighter who should be known primarily for his excellent submission skills that have seen him beat Jake Shields, John Fitch, and Raul Levedo Jr. over the years. But Palhares' reputation as a truly despicable character precedes him, and on many occasions he is held on his submissions for far longer than he should have, even as the referee is doing his best to pry his grip loose, whether he is caught an arm or in his specialty, the heel hook. Once Rosimar takes hold of you for some strange reason, he has a tendency to really crank on the limb, ignoring any calls from the referee to break it loose. This has, of course, gotten him in quite a lot of trouble, with his contracts in both the UFC and World Series of Fighting getting terminated as a result. Very serious and potentially career-altering damage can be caused by such recklessness. And for our money, he is without question one of the dirtiest fighters in the history of combat sports. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to our channel. Apart from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.